Hello, and welcome to my review, long form review of Marvel Studios Thunderbolts. Asterisk. Starring Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, David Harbour, Hannah John Kamen, Wyatt Russell, Olga Kurylenko, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Lewis Pullman. So, where do I start? I think I'll start with the plot, and I really am a stickler for spoilers, so I'll try and be as basic as I use the IMDb plot synopsis. After finding themselves ensnared in a death trap, an unconventional team of anti-heroes must embark on a dangerous mission that will force them to confront the darkest corners of their pasts. I mean, that is as general as you can possibly get. So that's really a basic outline of the film. These characters you may or may not have seen before. They've appeared in various other Marvel properties in phases 4 and 5, predominantly. In fact, I think all of them are. I think straight out of the bat, I think this is my first podcast probably or review of this sort. And I was told to just hit record and try not to sort of sophisticatingly edit around yourself. So I think looking at that, do you have to have reviewed any previous Marvel films or TV shows? I would say the number one would be the Black Widow film from 2021. I think certainly 3 of the characters I see on this list, possibly 4 actually, appear in that film, so that would be the number one to watch, and then probably Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Other than that, I think you could probably get away with not knowing too much, and I think the film really does work you can just enter this cold standalone sort of pieced film, which is great. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think best placed, the cards on the table, because I think this is my first review, so I think cards on the table as to where I sit with the Marvel films in general. For me, I'm a huge fan, an unashamedly fan, and so much so that I get accused of being a shill sometimes by my relatives. But that said, I am a fan. I do love this world. I love these characters. I love this for the majority of the stories that they tell within it, and I think it's sort of become a little bit cool to rag on it and to slag it off over the last few years. And to be fair, some of that is self-inflicted. I think not all of the projects that they've done have hit. I don't think all of the projects that they've done have had the same level of care and attention and detail that the previous phases had. There's an element of revisionist history to some of the criticism I see around it. I don't think all of the projects in phase 1 and phase 2, for example, were as box office smashingly well put together and high quality as certainly some people with rose tinted glasses look back on. That said, I think recently, last 2 to 3 years, there's been a significant drop in focus and attention, and I think focus is the key word for me as a big super fan. Previous phases, certainly pre-Infinity War and Endgame, there was a really clear direction of travel, and we all sort of collectively knew where we were going, we knew where we were headed, and that worked. That was really helpful to sort of know where we were going. But if you remember pre-Infinity War, there wasn't a huge setup to Thanos. We knew he was coming, but there wasn't a huge sort of he's appeared in this one to set up his character direction. No, Infinity War was his origin story. So I think some of that criticism is a little harsh to throw at them nowadays because they're not doing anything too different to what they did before. But they really executed the finale of Endgame so well that I think coming out of that, it was a challenge for them, or has been a challenge for them. I also think the quality control has dropped as a fan as well, and this I may make this into another video into my overall thoughts on it, but phases 4 and 5 have not felt as superior in terms of for me, one of my big bugbears has been the editing of some of these films has been quite appalling. some of the stories as well have been very rough around the edges, and like I said, a lot of cutting room floor putting together. I think it's fair to say. So I think, you know, they haven't helped themselves with some of the other things. Then there are circumstances that are outside of their control as well. You know, I'm not going to get into any of them, but pandemic, court cases, and these are all from a impartial observer. You know, I'm a fan. I just look at movie news and certain people on YouTube I follow, and you sort of take in the information and absorb it. The writer's strike as well, I think, played a key role. But I think, yeah, anyway, I think that's a majority of the background context stuff that I wanted to go into. I'm not going to list specific projects that I've not liked in the last two phases, you know, phases 4 and 5. But I think, yeah, it's been hit and miss, I think is a term I hear quite often labelled at Marvel or the Marvel Cinematic Universe over the last few years. And so, yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. But that said, I seem to be more positive about the future or about them as a studio than some other people I do see on YouTube. So anyway, that said, context out of the way. That's the context we're coming into this film with. This is the final film of Phase 5, a phase that it looks relatively short on paper, to be fair. I think, you know, some real world circumstances may have taken some of their time and projects away from them. But yeah, we'll get into my overall thoughts about the film there. But that's the background context to how we've got here and where we sit within the franchise itself. So my thoughts. I really like this film. Yeah, I really liked it. It's just what I was craving as well. I didn't hate Captain America Brave New World. I didn't love it either. I thought it was very, you know, sitting in the middle of the road. I thought it was serviceable. I understand there was a lot of things that they put right or set up in that film that probably will come to fruition later on, but yeah, I think that film was left a lot to be desired, to be fair. This film, the opposite. I think it was really well executed. I think you could tell that from the promotion anyway. Again, this is just from a casual observer and a fan watching the way that Marvel promotes it. They had confidence in this one. Yeah, they had real confidence in the way that they were promoting it, the way they were advertising it, the way they were really sort of highlighting this date in the calendar for a release, where I didn't feel that way on a couple of the other ones, on a Cap 4 as well earlier this year. They really seemed to be sort of just get it out in cinemas feel. Again, as a fan looking. But this one, yeah, they seem to really have confidence, and I can see why. When you're watching this film, the script, I think, was, I don't want to say airtight. It felt like they had real confidence in what they were doing and how they were doing it. You know, I'm a bit of a film nerd, so I can sort of hopefully watch it and go, oh, you know, they look like they knew what the assignment was and how they wanted to go about it. I think the cast works really well. They really, my criteria for Marvel films, or films in general actually, and as you get to know me a bit more, I think that will come across. Films make me feel. Films that make me feel something is usually my barometer. If they can make me emote in any way, then they'll usually be a winner with me. Anyone that I sit there and a bit apathetic with, then they're probably not going to score that highly with me. And this film made me feel. And again, films are an art form. They're subjective. You bring what you bring to a film, and if it touches you, it does. Then if it doesn't, then it doesn't, and your sort of opinion is checkered as a result of that. But yeah, this film touched me. I think it's a film that is brave in what it's saying about loneliness and about depression, and I'm not saying that I've suffered from any of that in my life, but I think we've all had moments of self-doubt. I mean, setting up this channel, for example, was one. But I think the dramatic parts are really well done. There is humour in it as well, which I always appreciate, and I think they nail it in it. It's not shoehorn jokes or out of place character moments. They all fit in character, and I think the film benefits as a result of it. I think they nail the tone really well, and though the subject matter can get quite heavy, there's not a barrage of jokes to sort of contradict the dramatic moments that come. And I think, yeah, like I said, that it was really pleasing to watch. From the first 15 minutes, I thought, I'm loving this already. The story they're telling, the tone, it was nice to see some of these characters again, even though I going into it, you think, I'm never going to root for these characters. And by the end of it, those characters have warmed with me more so than others. And I guess the best comparison probably would be Guardians in terms of characters you probably weren't familiar with, or minor, dare I say, B-level characters that you grow to love and you grow to appreciate a bit more than you did before. And yeah, I think they really nail it. And it's specific cast members shout out, but obviously Florence Pugh is the standout in the film. She's been brilliant as Yelena in everything I've seen her in, Black Widow film, Hawkeye, and now this. And I think, yeah, she's an awesome movie star, and I think she was really given license to really act in this film. And it benefits from a character arc over these 3 films. I think there's a real finality to it at the end of it as well, which, without spoiling, I think it's a really nice way of starting her story in Black Widow, carrying it through Hawkeye, and finishing it to a certain extent in a place where you can see her complete character arc has been, dare I say, fulfilled in terms of becoming a hero. That's the journey she's been on. She's following in her sister's footsteps, and she more or less completes it by the end of this film without spoiling anything. And I really appreciated that. Lewis Pullman also stands out as Bob, and he's given an awful lot to do. He really does it well, and I'm not a big fan of the character he plays in the comics personally, don't shout at me, but he did have me rooting for him towards the end of the film to overcome his struggles. I thought there was really well executed final act. I can see some criticism online that I'm not at one with everyone with that, but I really dug it. I thought it was a really, I don't want to say unique way but for a Marvel film, it's an unexpected final act, totally out of character with Marvel, but in a good way, that you want them to mix it up every now and then and give you something different, and I think they did that here. Other characters, David Harbour's always hilarious. I think US Agent John Walker, Wyatt Russell's portrayal, I thought he was really good in this film, and I really didn't like him in not him personally, the character. I really hated that character in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. But yeah, I really liked him in this. Thought he good, and Ghost as well. I thought she was really good. If I was to give a quibble, I think, Winter Soldier. Let's talk about him for a second. I think he was barely used in this film, and that's not a bad thing as such. I think he was used as a sort of comfy pair of shoes. The usual characters show up and get us into this team dynamic, because that's the point of the film. They've got to these solo characters becoming a team in the end, and not too much of a spoiler to say that they end up doing such a thing. But yeah, Bucky, I think, was sort of a bit superfluous, especially towards the end. He might as well have been any other character in the end. But again, that's a minor quibble of mine. I think from a film, it looks and feels different, and I think that's a good thing as well. And I think it's very pleasing to see that they can when they put their mind to it and they trust the cast and crew that are making the film, they can make a film that can stand out, and it can deliver on the various things you want a entertaining popcorn film to do, but also be able to carry the universe forward as well, which I think they definitely do by the end of the film. By the way, I will shout out the 2 end credit sequences, especially the one right at the end of the credits. Please stay and watch that, because that's one of the all-time great ones, I think. yeah, probably immediacy bias, but I think, yeah, definitely one of the best. And yeah, I've not got a lot wrong to say about this film. I think it was. And you know what? I will absolutely say as well. One of my gripes over the last few years of Marvel films has been the CGI effects, or the sort of, yeah, the digital effects. They've been getting worse, weirdly. In this film, I didn't have a quibble, not once, with the effects. I think that goes to the fact that the story was working and I was engaged and I was rooting for the characters, so I was in the film. So you don't notice those things a lot. But two, I think they actually were executed a lot better in this film than they have been previously. You know, last 2 or 3 films, Deadpool and Wolverine aside, I think there's been ropey CGI all over the place. I don't know what and why that is, but it's been noticeable and it's been getting progressively worse, weirdly. But in this film, no, it was much more back to the standard I expect, and I was very, very pleased to see that. So overall, yes, it is a massive recommendation for me. I haven't worked out what I want to do with these reviews just yet, whether I want to do a scoring system or anything. I'm not a big fan of that, to be honest. But for now, I'll just give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's definitely a thumbs up for this one. I'm a really big fan coming out. I really want to see it again, actually. I'm trying to convince my wife to go with me. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this film. I really, really want to see it again, and I urge anyone who is a passing interest in the MCU, if you're a checkered fan who's switched off, I would urge you to go back and give this one another go. I think this one's going to be a bit more satisfying than perhaps some of the entries you've seen in the last couple of years. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next film, which is the Fantastic Four film in July. So yeah, looking forward to that. Thank you very much for listening and watching. If you would please give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, or if you disagree with me or agree with me, send me a comment. I'm happy to engage. I'm happy to have a discussion. I don't want this to be a I tell you what you should think thing. No, I don't like that. I hate that. So yeah, engage with me. I'd love to have a discussion about film and TV and things that I'm into always. So yeah, drop me a like, drop me a subscribe, and get in touch. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.